This is English Shorthand Dictation number 138 and the dictation speed is 140 words per minute. Ready? Start. Madam, I think it is a correct decision that the proceeds of disinvestment should not be spent to meet the revenue gap. Therefore, National Investment Fund was created. From that corpus, 75% of amount will be spent on social sectors. Three important areas of social sectors were identified. One important social sector is education, another is health, and the third one is infrastructure. Since the inception of National Investment Fund, more than rupees 1000 crore of corpus has been created. But if you look at the budgetary allocation and actual spending, you will find that investment is much more than what could be available from the National Investment Fund. It is true that in the last 3 years, deposit in National Investment Fund was not made because we sought special dispensation. Huge amount of money had to be invested through stimulus packages to ensure that further deceleration of GDP is prevented. Keeping that in view, special dispensations were given by the cabinet in the last 3 years. We used them for making our developmental expenditure. I assure the honorable member that we would not like to seek further extension, though we are in a very difficult situation and all of you are fully aware of it. In respect of the disinvestment of the defense production units, there is no such proposal right now. Only 2 units have come right now, which are already listed, but no fresh proposal is under consideration. As and when the proposals are considered, they will be in the domain of public knowledge. For the petroleum sector, there have been some proposals which are under consideration. Honorable Chairperson, in regard to the moot point of the Honorable Member, I would like to submit that when we go to the market, we shall have to keep in view the market condition. We cannot sell our valuable assets at a condition where we will not get the adequate prices. The whole objective is to discover the latent price which is not known. It is because if you are holding 100%, you do not know what would be its value. In that case, you go by the technical method. With the closing of the cash balance, you divide the prevailing value with the number of shareholders and arrive at a notional value of the share. But when it is traded in the market, then the real value is discovered. I am fully aware of the current volatile situation in the market, and surely not only me, but any prudent finance minister would not like to dispose of valuable assets. If the House agrees, I would like to share the present international scenario and how it is going to affect the Indian economy and world economy, and I would like to have the benefit from the inputs of the honorable members who can help us. Of course, it would depend on the Honorable Speaker. We can have a discussion on the current international situation, including the volatility in the market. Madam Speaker, the statement given by the Minister outlines the disinvestment policy that seems to be largely based on whether the public sector enterprise is profitable. But I would like to ask the Honorable Minister whether there is a broader vision as to which economic activities are appropriate for the government to be involved in the public sector. For example, why is the government in the business of running hotels? Is that necessary for the government? In the current economic global difficulties we face, could we not imagine a new set of guidelines covering those activities where the private sector cannot provide a more efficient service, or those activities which are of the public and national interest, or where the private sector would not be interested? Could we not have some guidelines as to whether there are certain areas where the government needs to have the public sector involved rather than simply be in all the sectors we have been since decades? Madam Speaker, there is always a revision of the guideline. If you look at the present policy, you will realize that there has been an evolution of the guidelines and the policy thrust in respect of the disinvestment. The Honorable President in his address clearly spelled out the broad outline. I have also indicated it here. In the question hour, we do not discuss the policy matters and only the facts are discussed. But since the question was put in respect of the policy, the first couple of paragraphs have dealt with the policy and salient features of the policy are given there. We have clearly spelled out that the government holdings will under no circumstances come below 51%. Things like at what level it will be decided and at what percentage it will be decided are being worked out in consultation with the administrative ministries and various stakeholders. There is a group of ministers under my chairmanship which consults various stakeholders and concerned authorities. All these processes are carried out before arriving at a decision. Sir, nowadays the safety match industry is facing a very serious problem not only in Tamil Nadu but all over India. The safety match industry is segregated into three parts, namely completely handmade, partially mechanized and fully mechanized. Safety match making can be classified into 5 steps, namely frame filling, dipping, box filling, label pasting and packing. In completely handmade units, all these 5 processes are being carried out without the use of power. But in partially mechanized units, the processes of frame filling and dipping are being carried out through machines, while box filling, label pasting and packing are being performed by hand. In fully mechanized units, all the 5 processes are being carried out through machines. The current situation is that the completely handmade units have shrunk into 3%, while the partially mechanized units are contributing 72% of the total production and 25% comes from completely mechanized units. As a result, all the laborers who are engaged in handmade units have shifted to semi-mechanized units. After the implementation of the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, this industry is facing labor crunch. However, they did not achieve their production target and the imposition of excise duty is adding fuel to the fire. As per the available survey report, partially mechanized units have contributed 79% employment in safety match industry. Handmade safety match industry employs least number of laborers. Semi-mechanized units employ most of the laborers, taking over the position of small-scale industry from handmade units. I shall therefore urge upon the Union Government that total excise duty exemption should be extended to semi-mechanized units at par with handmade units to save this industry. Today, in the context of the 21st century, we need to make our institutions more competitive. We need to amend the governance structure of these institutions, both government and private. We need to get representation of experts from outside the system instead of these institutions being controlled by officials of the Government of India or of the state governments. We must get representation of industry, the scientific experts and the alumni into the board of governors, which we have not done. Who is really interested in the institution? It is the student who has passed out of the institution who remembers it in the course of his life and has deep affection for the institution and therefore would like to invest in it and would like to show that the institution achieves greater heights. As this House considers some of these issues, there should be a general consensus because education represents the future of India. Our young people, no matter where they are and to which community they belong, are entitled to quality education, but they do not have appropriate governance structure to be able to compete with the rest of the world and create knowledge, which alone is the wealth of any nation. The wealth of a nation is not the infrastructure of an institution. The wealth of of a nation is not the amount of fees that the institution charges. The wealth of a nation is also not the representation of people of so-called high eminence on the board of governors. The wealth of a nation is the creativity of the student community. The creativity of the student community will only come about if you allow the student community the freedom to think and give it the necessary infrastructure so that they can actually realize the dreams that they have for themselves, for their families, and for their country.